Hardin Lang, who's the Vice President for Programs and Policy at Refugees International. He's previously served in several UN humanitarian missions, joining us now from Washington, D.C. Thanks for your time, sir. So what do you think is behind this thinking, using a startup organization in Gaza when there are organizations who have operated on the ground in the Strip for decades and are trusted by Palestinians?
It's a great question, Doreen. It's very hard to see or understand the logic behind this from a humanitarian perspective. We are now in a situation where large chunks of Gaza and the population in Gaza have endured, a year plus of very intense war and are in very desperate humanitarian situation. There are reports, very credible reports from you and other agencies that we are close to, if not tipping into famine in large chunks of the Gaza Strip, largely due to the fact that aid has been restricted in. Mounting the kind of operation that is required to keep famine at bay is a complex and very logistic intensive operation. It is not something that you turn the keys over to a new operation that's just finding its feet, and one that's a highly securitized model. So if you're trying to meet humanitarian need, this is not the way you do it. And it's not just the UN that says this. Jake Wood, who was the former executive director until a few days ago of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, has resigned from his job over the very concerns that this institution is not set up to meet the needs of the people of Gaza.
Are you concerned that this is an attempt to weaponize the distribution of humanitarian aid, also by restricting aid to just one part of the Gaza Strip? And perhaps this is a way for the U.S. and Israel to meet their own political objectives?
Again, if the design at the point of the project is to meet humanitarian need, then you go with distribution sites throughout the Gaza Strip, much along the lines of what the United Nations and the international community, humanitarian community have established, with over 400 possible distribution sites spread throughout the community, able to meet needs where they are, and not just provide food aid in one place. Keep in mind right now, this model is built to distribute food in 3 to 4 highly securitized mega distribution sites, as opposed to being able to distribute shelter, access to medical care, access to malnutrition treatment for children who are highly malnourished, and we know there are thousands of children in acute malnourishment. These things they're not going to happen through the distribution hubs, and these are just as painful needs as food for many of the population. So this is not being set up to meet the needs of people. It very much feels as though it's being designed to center or to locate or to pull people into the south of Gaza, into an area that's been designated by the Israelis as a humanitarian zone, as opposed to trying to meet the needs of a very desperate population.
And what do you make of the Israeli narrative and the argument put forward by them that the plan is needed to stop Hamas from stealing aid? Of course, they haven't provided any evidence to support these claims, and Hamas does deny doing so.
I think this is a really important question, right? If the entire sort of public narrative around this plan is that it is required because there has been mass or strategic aid diversion by Hamas, it would be very helpful to have some evidence of that. And I say this because the UN system and international aid providers have developed over decades systems for monitoring the distribution of assistance. This is not to say that aid isn't looted inside of Gaza. We know that that is happening in many situations. But if the challenge is, or if from the Israeli perspective, the challenge is that aid is being stolen en masse by Hamas, and as some of the Israeli spokespeople have said, being used to, in essence, they're selling on the black market and then accruing those funds to pay the fighters. The way you get around that is to flood the zone with humanitarian aid. That lowers the price dramatically on the black market and basically turns humanitarian aid into a non-commodity from the perspective of raising money or controlling the population. So there are means of doing this that meet both the humanitarian needs and address the aid diversion question if you're concerned about strategic aid diversion. So A, there are other ways to do this that are more effective, and then B, we need to have some evidence of this, and we need an open, good faith dialogue between the Israelis and the humanitarian community to really get a sense of what the nature of the challenge is so it can be fixed. It's very hard to fix a problem if you have no real evidence or description of it.
And under this plan, there are reports that Palestinians would be expected to collect boxes, some of them weighing up to 20 kilograms. What does this mean for people who are most vulnerable or for those who are injured?
So if you have a very high percentage of the population who has been injured or damaged in some way during combat operations over the last, year plus, almost 2 years, and you have a situation where and you have highly malnourished populations, elderly, sick, children, none of these people are going to be able to move to where to walk from other parts of Gaza all the way down to the central aid distribution hubs and wait for what is likely to be a very long time in that line to get access. So in essence, you're shifting access to some able-bodied members of families to go and get it and then carry back. That is not an effective mechanism, for meeting the needs of the most vulnerable first, which is what we have to do in the humanitarian principles. But it also just isn't logistically feasible to meet the needs of the population, given what those needs are at this stage.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Hardin Lang, you're the Vice President for Programs and Policy at Refugees International. Thanks for your time. Thanks for speaking to us on Al Jazeera.
Thank you very much.